for whatever reason, like it was when we bought the house, it was just little piles of dead woodlouse, just like they'd all gathered in a pile to die. I was like, that's weird, but okay, whatever. And now, even though we're living in it still, they're just absolutely everywhere.
And you've just gone,
So
whatever. I'm not going to get to the
I
bottom.
think, to be honest, I think it's because we've got an old front door. There's a gap like that big underneath
Right.
the door, so that's on the to-do list. But
So it's not a curse. We're just, maybe they're just
hopefully
finding
not. We'll see. I'll fix the door and see if it still happens.
Antonio, aka Mondo Loops, thanks for being here today. How you doing, buddy?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's always nice to have a chill out and a chat for a change, break up the day.
Exactly, and we're in the same time zone as well. Almost everybody that I've spoken to so far has been in the US, and it's like a midnight podcast for me. So this is great, starting my day off on a positive note. I appreciate it, buddy.
Sweet.
Let's dive into the big questions. Over 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. How does it feel to be Mondo Loops and kind of if I may say, kind of the poster child of lo-fi? There was a time, especially around the pandemic, when so many people were listening to study beats, to lo-fi beats. And it was like, if you changed your sound or if you changed the arrangement a little bit, so many of the lo-fi producers kind of followed suit. What's it like to kind of hold that moniker, and is there any pressure there?
I don't know. I don't see any pressure, to be fair. I think when I started, there's always like a generation before, I guess. And obviously there's some huge sort of lo-fi artists who maybe don't even sort of release music anymore, but still got that sort of iconic spot. I think for streaming as well, there's sort of these iconic albums just constantly growing and growing. So yeah, I mean, I've always seen myself as sort of the newcomer, I guess.
Right.
Even now, I suppose, it still feels like I'm not, not one of the OGs.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Who were you looking at when you came into it? Obviously, when you and I and everybody else kind of dabbles in production, you're trying to find your sound. So you might be experimenting in lo-fi, and then you go to trap, and then you go to dance music. But in the beats scene, who were you looking at? Was it Evie? Was it before? Like who were the names?
It was Evie's generation, I suppose. But I think when I was in terms of actual production, I was trying to just do my own thing initially, and there was some awful music that came from that, I guess, from the first part. But production-wise, I mean, because when I started, I thought like I'm going to try and get my own unique sound, so I'll try and look from maybe more like electronica and that sort of production side of things, I guess, was what I was hoping to bring into lo-fi.
We're both inspired by like the kind of the bonobo style of electronica as well, right?
Yeah.
And
I think bonobo for me was, even though I guess it's not lo-fi hip hop, that sort of the first few albums were what, when I started production, was what I'd always loved to sort of try and capture. And I still love to sort of work more in that way. I think obviously they take so long, these recording all sorts of instruments, and it's quite an organic process. But yeah, that's always where I wanted to come from when I was trying to write music, I guess. More those like Animal Magic and the early albums, and the track called Silver. I didn't even know that one, but that was sort of, it's like trip hop. But it's always what I've envisioned as like my sort of favorite sound in that like trip hop, lo-fi hip hop sort of.
A kind of textural percussion stuff. Mm-hmm.
It's super simple, I guess. Composition, there's not much going on, but just the way that it's like the roads and the way that the drums are chopped up, it just, I don't know, there's something super hypnotic and interesting about it.
Is there any of that early pre-Mondo stuff out on the internet somewhere?
Potentially. I can't remember, there was, I've just sort of, I'd taken a few off Spotify. And I don't know if you've had this, I had this with YouTube as well. There was a couple of YouTube videos that were really poorly made for myself, that for whatever reason, I think part of the reason is because there was so many mistakes that people just couldn't resist telling me, and that blows up the video. So like, there's a few things like that I've kept, or like bad songs that I've done quite well that I've just sort of had to keep because I thought, it's still.
Dude, I've been there. One of my most popular videos until the last year, fairly recently, was just speaking on textures and pads. But of course, as you know, anybody that assigns like the burial thumbnail, it gets some
Yeah.
clicks, and you got to play the game early in the day. So like I did this burial video. Obviously, almost every electronic producer is inspired by Burial. You come across him somewhere in your career.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I've pretty much always listened to, that type of kind of, I wouldn't say lo-fi, but low fidelity, electronic, noisy music ever since I was at college. But I've never had any friends that listen to it, right? And so I've never been able to converse with someone and go, oh, Burial's album, Archangel, Burial's track, Archangel, blah, 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 blah. I'd never said it out loud. So I did the YouTube video, and it's like, you know, back in the early days of my YouTube videos, they were like 20, 30 minutes long because I didn't know how to trim them down enough, you know? And so like, I was speaking throughout this sort of like 20-minute video, just repeatedly saying Archangel, and just the comments were like, he calls himself a fan, you know, just going insane. And that was one of the ones I really wanted to take down, and was like, damn, it's really driving the views up. I have to leave it there. And you just have to kind of, but now that's almost like a ploy. You see that in TikTok culture and Instagram culture. That's kind of a ploy to get,
tactic.
You know, you'll say something really obvious, like, oh, my brown background, blah, blah, blah. You move on, and everybody's like, he doesn't even know the, you know, and it's just, I don't know if I could ever consciously sit in that realm of trying to fool people to drum up, you know, clicks.
And you sort of want to do it in such a way that maybe you don't seem like a fool of yourself.
Exactly. Because I'm too much of a perfectionist in my work anyway.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I've got like, you know, I've crossed the T's, dotted the I's, and then I don't want to like purposely say something wrong to, you know, people are like, that's not sidechain compression. And you're like, no, I'm trying to get, you know, people on the Patreon. Well. Exactly, right? You're trying to do one-to-one tuition.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So back to the lo-fi production for now. As you're building your career, and I guess even a question for right now, you know, today, do you see yourself as a lo-fi producer? Would you give yourself that kind of title, or do you see yourself as like an electronic producer, or do you play guitar? You know, you play drums and stuff. You got plenty in the background there. Do you just see yourself as a musician?
Yeah, I'd always just say musician, I suppose, and I think at the minute, I'm trying to branch out as best I can for the sort of longevity of it. I mean, lo-fi, as you mentioned, during the lockdown and the last few years, had a huge boom. But with everything, it sort of comes and goes, I guess. And there'll be like a steady base level, which maybe now, or maybe it's still trying to find that. But yeah, I'm trying to do other things as well. But so I think if anyone asks, that sort of music producer, I guess, is the label I'd sort of use, I guess. But
you haven't slid into YouTuber yet.
Not slid into YouTube yet. I feel like not there yet. Not got the quality yet, maybe.
I went to a dinner party like this was a year or two ago. You know, it was like I went with a friend and they knew everybody else, and there was this kid there, and my friend was like, he's a YouTuber, and I'm kind of in, you know, rabbit in the headlights, got deer in the headlights thing. No. And they were like, he's a YouTuber to this kid. And they were like, oh yeah, how many subscribers you got? And at that time it was like, I don't know, 20 or 30,000, something like that. And I was like, gassed, you know, because you've quit your day job, you're doing that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, only like 20 or 30,000. And this little kid just went, that's nothing. Mr. Beast has got millions. And I was like, all right, nice one, And that was kind of that conversation. I was trying to do the same. Like I used to be a session musician for so long. And then I was a teacher for 10 years, as you know, like, so I really struggle with saying like I'm a particular type of producer or even a YouTuber. I always try and go like musician, educator, you know, music teacher, whatever. And then if questions follow, other people kind of assign that, oh, so you're an influencer, and you're like, oh, I don't have an affiliate link, but I guess, like, you know, and I think the thing that's tough as well is like people, I don't know if you found this, they tend to assign you labels as well. Maybe you've noticed that in the videos that aren't lo-fi focused on your channel. On my channel, I think one of the earliest videos I did was like garage production, UKG stuff,
Right.
because of where we're at in the world. And
Yeah.
I did a few of those that popped at that time, and then I went into the lo-fi, then I went into the ambient stuff, and I'd have this onslaught of people being like, I don't even know why you're covering this, you're a garage producer. And I'm like, dude, I've never been to a garage rave, I don't really know. Like, I was just, focusing on stuff. And now there's like so much lo-fi there that people are like, if I delve into anything else, they're like, I can't believe a lo-fi producer is covering, I did a video on like new metal, which bombed, by the way, but folks just telling me like, you got to stick to your lane.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with that? Because you have another moniker or other monikers outside of Mondo, right?
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, isn't it? Some in YouTube and in music in general, often people don't necessarily want you to change what you're doing, and especially if you're trying to sort of build a consistent brand and make money from your music. If you start to throw out every different style of music that you want to create under one sort of alias, it's bad for streams, I guess. Spotify doesn't like it. Spotify wants to know exactly what your sort of sound is and put you into a category and have all the similar artists and this sort of, I guess, big ecosystem of similar sounds that you can follow.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, but I think it's nice to start afresh as well with a new sort of music identity and just get rid of any expectation of what your sound is and yeah, sort of keep it fresh. But I think YouTube as well, it's difficult because for me anyway, I'd like to experiment with different sounds and just explore different genres. And as you said, if you throw out a new metal, your sort of subscribers may not click on it as often as and there's always people who just enjoy watching your content who will click on it, but YouTube sees like a dip compared to maybe a lo-fi video, and then they don't promote it as much, and it's sort of like hinders the performance, which is it's a pain, but it's nice to sort of try new things anyway. And I think eventually they can get picked up by the algorithm, I suppose.
Do you think that there's we were talking about dips in any genre. I'm working on a video right now that is like, I don't know if it will come out. It depends how the workflow is. I don't know if you ever work on a video and halfway through you're like, this is crap. So we'll see. But I'm working on a video now, which is all the kind of sub genres in 2024 that are kind of popping up, but seemingly have huge numbers, but no one, if I speak to my friends that are just passively listening to music, they're not musicians, they've never heard of them. And it feels very much like that early lo-fi scene where if you know, and it was almost like a producer community that was listening to it. Things like, I guess the biggest one that everybody's familiar with would be like Botanica, like that petalcore kind of sound. But then other ones that are like really niche and the kind of TikTok sphere is like, I think it's called Badots. Have you heard of that one?
No, I've not heard of that.
It's like the most famous song is like normally girls showing I think it's like their week-long wardrobe to one particular song. And it's like emergency calling on Dr. Beat or whatever it is. And it was like this producer that would like chop up old, I guess it was like 80s, 90s tracks and then...
I think I've seen a video about this actually, yeah.
Dude, it's very like... It makes me feel like... What was that PS1 game that we all had that was like a music... like
I had a PS2 version, I think, called like MTV Music Generator.
That was it. Yeah, PS2, yeah. And it feels very much like that. And there's another one that's like Aero... I've got it written down somewhere. Aero something. And it's like... everything is that Windows Vista kind of shiny blue kind of aesthetic, like again in the early days of lo-fi, everything being kind of anime driven. And I'm just like, I can't believe that this early 2000s thing is popping off. But then you check out the stream numbers and folks have got like 7, 8, 9 million monthly listeners, and you're like,
mental, innit?
I don't get it. I don't know who's listening to it. So I'm trying to do a video on that. Anyway, I digress. Long story longer. We mentioned about, genres kind of having a dip or a sell-by date. Do you see that for the lo-fi beat scene? And do you see an end to Mondo Loops, or will you try and veer into the ambient and then into whatever that becomes?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be some demand for it. and so many people have found it's got a quite a sort of practical use, I suppose, in the whole like studying music. And a lot of people have found it really comforting. So I think it'll linger on, I'm sure, for many years, and there'll always be a sort of core base. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of genres that spin off it, like with lo-fi records. You can see that they're sort of trying to explore different subgenres, and they've got like the synth wave and dark ambient and that sort of thing. And there's so much crossover that it sort of feels like a lot of the listeners sort of gravitate towards maybe a new sound, and they'll follow you with it. Um, and I think the lo-fi sound in general does change over time as well. So there's definitely going to be an evolution of it. And unless I get sort of completely consumed by another genre, I'm sure I'll still be making music for a while under Mondo Loops. But there's loads of other projects that I'd like to try. Some of them aren't that dissimilar. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's like, for example, I've been working on a bit of a trip hoppy electronica album for a couple of years now since I started working on it, but without actually releasing it anywhere. And that's probably not that dissimilar to lo-fi, I guess, but that would be a new alias that I'd like to sort of spend some time on. So yeah, there's always going to be similar sounds coming from it, I'm sure.
That's really exciting to hear that you've got a project in the works that you've been like chipping away at. Because I always find that with some, and each lo-fi artist will be different, but like with some of the lo-fi beats stuff, it's like almost throwaway. You can drum it up pretty quickly. Similar formula if you know what you're working with, and you can kind of get those projects out, to kind of service the community. So that's really exciting. And I'd almost like to revisit a conversation that I had with Towers one day to see if he still stands by his words. But I remember a couple of years ago, Towers said, lo-fi is a very practical genre, which I think you almost said the same words there, in the sense that he felt at the time, I don't want to say he feels now, but he said at the time, like, it's something that, unlike hip hop, if you're into lyrics, we're not talking about hip hop instrumentals, but unlike hip hop or pop music, metal, you don't have to actively listen to it. And I remember I don't think he was on the podcast. It was a beat battle, but we were just kind of generally talking. And he said that it's kind of strange creating a genre where people aren't intended to like listen to your work. And, you and I could listen to either end of the spectrum. We could listen to Bonobo, and a producer mind switches on and you go, well, how did they get that cello sound, but it sounds like a synth, and this, or you could listen to Kendrick Lamar and break down all of the lyrics and the double entendres and stuff. And then with lo-fi as a producer, I think you're going, well, I don't want this to be too loud of a lead guitar, and I don't want this to take up too much space in the mix. Yeah, it's very much a practical genre. Do you
yeah, for sure, it's practical. Yeah. I think there was always it's a bit strange when your numbers start to go up in lo-fi, and as you're saying, there's sort of like, I mean, maybe not Bonobo, but artists like Fortet and Floating Points, who are obviously globally famous, incredible productions, and then you're seeing that lo-fi producers are getting more monthly listeners or more streams or whatever, and it's sort of like, hang on a minute, this doesn't seem, it's a bit strange about that, but it's a functional genre. It's sort of designed, I guess, for like the Spotify era of listening to music, and playlists, and shorter tracks and stuff like that. So it's sort of, again, it's a bit strange to get these numbers, and it sort of feels a bit like, hang on, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this well or whatever. But it's just part of the sort of the game of the genre, I suppose.
So what did, on the lead up to where you're at now, the YouTube channel, the Mondo Loops character, if I can call it that, what was your background in music, whether it be live performance or electronica, prior to people knowing you?
I played guitar since sort of school age. Guitar was my main instrument, really, and I dabbled in production. my friends were all sort of big into that sort of electronica, burial, sort of UK house music at the time, lo-fi house, I suppose, stuff like that. So I'd had I had FL Studio for a bit, and then I moved over to Ableton, and I sort of messed about with it without really producing anything. And then in school, I think, I dropped a couple of like housey songs, and that was about it. And it wasn't until COVID was really when the lo-fi stuff took off. But I was sort of fortunate that just before that, I'd started making some lo-fi, well, some guitar videos on YouTube. And my motivation initially was I'd always wanted a MacBook, but I could never justify buying a MacBook, even like an old secondhand one. It's sort of, I don't know if you've ever looked at the specs, but like you get into it and it's like, oh, but then I could get like a cheaper Windows one with a better processor.
Yeah, they have a brilliant model of like, in the Mac world, everything's soldered down, so you can't really put a new graphics card or whatever in it. Not anymore anyway. So you were always like, well, if I pay another 500, then I get 16 gigs of RAM. And they were just always like leveling you up.
And because I'm quite analytical when I'm buying stuff as well, I've always started always researching. It's like I can never justify doing it because on paper it looks so much worse. So anyway, I was like, right, okay, I'll just see if I can make some money with music, and then that'll push me in the right direction to get a MacBook. So the plan initially was to make like guitar loop covers on YouTube, which I think always do pretty well if they sort of pop off. And at the time, there was like Sean Angus Watson, that you've ever heard of him. Obviously, he's a beautiful guitar player, and he was doing this like Redbone and John Mayer covers. It's like, oh, I like that music. I'll give something a go.
Anything Redbone was popping off at that time as well.
Anything Redbone, yeah, lo-fi Redbone, anything Redbone. They probably still takes off now,
sure.
whatever
yeah,
reason.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that was it. That was the plan, and it sort of gravitated. I'd made these loops, and I was like, well, I'll try maybe just jamming out and writing my own thing, and then I'll put some drums to it, and it sort of started to veer towards that lo-fi world. So then it was like, it sort of happened quite naturally. It's sort of guitar loops for drums, then it was like lo-fi guitar, and releasing like free sample packs and stuff. I remember I released like a guitar loop pack on YouTube, like one of the first videos I did, and it ended up making its way onto Roddy Ricch album.
Really? I didn't know this.
And I sort of said on the video, I don't know, like, message me if you want to use it commercially or something. Like, I didn't have a contract. It was just like, here's a Google Drive, message me. And one day someone commented like, oh my God, this has ended up on Roddy Ricch.
Roddy Ricch didn't message, didn't say?
No one messaged. So never got any credits or money, but it's on there.
Do you know what song it is?
It's called Moonwalking.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The credits on that would have been probably quite nice.
I would have liked a credit. I messaged the producer to be like, oh, can you credit me? He was like, yeah, man, I'll speak to my lawyers. That's just like 4 years ago. Still waiting.
The person you have called.
Yeah.
Oh man, so that's cool.
How I veered into lo-fi. And then I just, it peaked off in 2020. It just kept growing for a good few years. It skyrocketing.
Because what were you at your height? Was it 2 million monthly?
I think so. Yeah, about 2 million, which is wild. And it sort of veers off a bit, but I think we're starting to get to like the plateau of it all now, I guess.
When you started drifting away from that 2 million number, does that give you any particular like, oh no, I've got to churn out more, or were you quite comfortable with the number kind of dipping below a certain margin? I
think I'm pretty anxious as well, and I've always sort of buried my head in the sand with numbers and stuff. Like even now, like I don't like to log on to my Spotify for artists.
Right.
I just don't want to know, like, because it's all it's sort of dipped in the last few years. I try not to look at it, and I mean it's difficult because, especially with like just looking at Spotify streaming numbers, it doesn't necessarily equate to sort of like overall, I guess, what I'll be earning for the year, and there's different opportunities that come up and stuff like that. But yeah, I do bury my head in the sand a lot and just try and avoid it. I've always expected it. I've always anticipated it. I've been very cautious, and uh, as I've done this job, tried to be sensible with everything. And I think when you're a musician as well, whenever you sort of invest in new equipment, um, I saw a video. I can't remember who it was by, but it was essentially talking about how everything you buy when you're sort of a musician is an investment, really, and sort of treat it like that. So you can get a vintage synth if it's going to hold its value, but if you spend whatever 500 quid on a plugin, that's you're never going to get that back. And I've sort of tried to sort of keep that mindset.
Wow, Mondo actually makes such a great point there. Investing in analog gear over plugins, because if nothing else, they're really going to hold their value should you want to maybe pass them on later down the line. It's definitely something that I'm going to introduce to the channel over the coming months. You'll see a little bit more hardware technology on the channel. Obviously, I've got the SP over the back there, and I want to get my hands on that Nightverb pedal as well. I've heard brilliant things about it. But I think Mondo would agree, another thing that you need to invest in if you're a creator is actually getting your musical discography out into the world. And that's why today's episode is sponsored by DistroKid. Right now it's back to school season, and I'm giving students and educators 50% off their subscription when they use the link in the description below. And even if you're neither of those, you can still get 7% off your whole first year with a separate link, which is also in the description. DistroKid, I use it on almost all of my releases, gets my music out to 200 plus platforms, and they've got so many tools to help me plug and promote and get my music heard, as well as help master it with Mixia or find artwork with DistroPick using AI to generate just that kind of vibe that you want. I've used it time and time again. It never fails. Use the links in the description, and let's get back to this episode. My friend always used to say, he's like my best friend in the whole world, and he's like a collaborator, like kind of a silent collaborator on almost everything I do, whether it be YouTube or music or whatever, because he's brilliant at everything. But in the early days when I was still in teaching, I used to visit he had like a cabin at the end of the garden, like studio setup, loose studio setup, and it was like iMac, and it was on a desk that wasn't drilled down, and the left side of the desk was all books, and he was just like kind of propping it up, and then there was like a stereo jack to two mono jacks, but you had to like unplug one of the mono jacks a little bit, otherwise there'd be like this weird phase cancellation thing, you couldn't hear anything. And I remember as he was doing that, he's just plugging these various bits in, and he's wiggling these cables to see if a connection is made and stuff. He said to me, like, and we were young as well, we were in like our early 20s, and he was like, musician stuff is always DIY. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, anybody else, any other like you're a photographer, you buy new cameras, you get new lenses, you're a painter, you become way more adept at your skills, and you have a way higher kind of technique or skill level. You get new pens, you get new paints, new paper, what is the right paper, anything, whether it be sport or a craft, it just seems to get better. And he was like, it doesn't matter who, and we were both session musicians at the time, he was like, it doesn't matter who you meet, there's always this level of like DIY to what you're doing, where it's like, oh, I bought this thing, but it has to be at this angle, otherwise it doesn't work. Or like, like even before we started the podcast, like you've got like a dodgy tripod stand or webcam setup or whatever, and it's like one of those things where it's like, I got to figure this out, but I haven't done that yet. There's always something in your collection where you're like, this isn't perfect, but I really like what I've got going on right now. I don't think I'll ever be like, perfectly. I looked at the guitarist Tim Henson, and his home studio that he's got set up, and it's all like white, pristine. All the outboard is there, and I just go, I'll never have that. I'll never have this perfect, and I don't know if I want it. I don't know if I want to go into like a anechoic chamber and be like, this is amazing.
I mean, when I was getting the sort of acoustics done for the studio in here, there's a company called Gick Acoustics, which I think is in the UK somewhere. And they sort of take pictures of your room, and they'll tell you like what they recommend for studio acoustics. And I went sort of fairly heavy, but if I was to follow all of their advice, it would sort of make the room so impractical I'd have to move the desk way further away, off the wall. Every wall would be covered in panels, and there's like the big bass traps in the corners, and then I couldn't have a couch because I'd have to have a bass trap there, and it's a lot. But I don't think you need it. I mean, there's plenty of producers who obviously now, people are doing it on AirPods and their phones, which is mental.
Oh yeah, people don't even have studios anymore. They're just kind of traveling around the world with their laptop, which is something I kind of romanticize sometimes, of just hotel room beat making and just like seeing the world and stuff. But I do like that. Like you've got my ideal setup. Like you've got this nice homey space, which is, I assume, separate to your home, like a kind of, I'm not going to dox you, but like end of the garden kind of setup. And then you've kind of made it a nice living space, but a creative space, and it's bright. You've got natural light. That's really lovely. I don't think, like you say, if you had like the bass traps and you had the floating whatevers, and you just have less
it's important,
human touch.
Yeah. As you're saying, like with the sort of white pristine, and I've seen a few producers on YouTube who have that super slick or sort of futuristic feel. But yeah, I think the homeliness of it is definitely helps.
What was it like building the new studio? Was it an absolute nightmare, or did it surprise you?
But there was challenges. It was sort of better than I anticipated it was going to be. It was like, it's a garage that's attached to the house, and when I bought it, it was very, very dingy and moldy, and it was just sort of. I think it'd been put up quickly in the 80s, and also the roof. There was like quite a low roof, and I didn't realize that I could just get rid of it and have this sort of tall ceilings. And it took a while though. There was a lot of little issues, sort of DIY issues, maybe not that interesting, but there's all sorts of like gas pipes I had to move, and rerouting water pipes and wiring, and yeah.
Are you handy, or is that other people doing those jobs?
I did the studio pretty much myself.
Really?
Yeah. It's not perfect, but I think it's quite doable, and it's quite rewarding, I guess. Just had the pod, especially painting it. Painting it took so long, so I'd got like a lime wash paint.
Right.
You've seen it. You sort of crisscross.
That's it.
Get this like texture. But for whatever reason, they don't always look the same as the pictures. The colors turn out differently, so you're supposed to try it first, which I didn't do. So I ended up painting it, and it was like bright pink. Like, I can't have this. It was too pink. And so like I did it again, and it was like too green. So it took me weeks to just get the paint right.
Really?
But
I'm giggling because you said it's quite easy, but you'd also followed that with like, I had to reroute gas lines and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, if there's anything that happens, I'm like, yo, all right, landlord, it's me again.
I didn't touch the gas, to be fair.
Oh, okay.
I got something for that, yeah.
I'm pleased to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm just pivoting slightly. What does an average day look like for you? Because you seem like the busiest person. You're always, at least on social media, it seems like you're always pushing a sample pack. You've always got, every time I go on Spotify, there's a new album or EP, collaboration. Then you've got the YouTube as well. Are you rigid with your time? Or are you do you tend to like are the things that we're seeing on the internet, are they all kind of backlogged?
Yeah, I feel like for me there's sort of like two phases I could be in. And in an ideal world, I'd like to be on top of it, like planning out my days.
Of course, yeah.
Because I've got like a weekly planner at the minute, which I'm trying to stick to, which is like the dream scenario. Because most of the time I'm just sort of firefighting. Like the past few months, I've not touched my emails because I'm trying to like keep on top of stuff that I know I've got to do like this week. So yeah, in an ideal world, I'd be planning out my days, but if I'm being honest, most of the time I'm just dealing with like the most urgent thing on the list. And when you do it that way as well, the sort of projects that I'd like to be working on, the sort of like new Alias and electronica and stuff like that always, I guess, is at the bottom of the list. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to keep on top of it. How are you finding it? Are you always pretty strict to schedule, or
I'm smiling, which is a hard
videos quite frequently.
I feel bad that I'm like giddy with joy that you've said that, because when I sit down with friends and peers in our space, and I hear that they're like anxious about something, or that they're struggling with the boatload of projects and work that they've got to output, I'm like, I'm not alone. Let's go. And no,
Everyone is surely.
I'm very much the same. Just
Yeah.
the analogy of or the metaphor of the swan. I'm calm on the top and just fighting for my life underwater.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much the same. I'm the same as you. I've got like a little kind of like weekly planner that I have here that kind of gives me my day by day. And in an ideal space or an ideal day, that is kind of notated out, sort of hour by hour, what meetings I have or what I need to work on. And I've got a digital one as well. I'm like, both my parents have OCD, so I know that nicked me a little bit. So I've got like a chalkboard, a planner. I've got a pad. I've got two pads here, and then I've got a digital planner as well. And they all basically say the same thing.
Right.
So on a good day, I'll like stick to that, and it gives me relatively low levels of anxiety, because you're just like, oh, I'm eating now. Oh, I'm doing this now. Oh, I've got that to do. That's great. But that's not how life works. And you go, oh shit, I've got no bread. I got to go out and do this thing, or I just sold some bits on eBay, and that now I've got to go to the post office and send those things off. And when I have those little interruptions, and I'm serial procrastinator as well. I'm massively addicted to the iPhone. I've had to install, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I've had to install all of these like stupid apps that like block other apps, don't allow me to install apps, put it in black and white. I've got this minimal setup, because if I go anywhere near my phone, like I've told my friend this, and he's like, just don't go on your phone. And I'm like, dude, it's not. Yeah, I feel like an addict. Like I'm the gambler that they design these apps for. If I start scrolling, I can't stop. So
it's tough.
If I start my day, and I do feel kind of like embarrassed to say this, but if I start my day on a bad foot, so if I start the day with scrolling, or if I don't get up early enough, I try not to let myself play video games too often, because I'll go, oh, that's super fun. I'll do that. Then I tend not to get anything done the whole day, and then in my head, well, I'll try tomorrow. And I was very much like that when I used to work. Even though I was a teacher, we'd have like the periods of downtime where you were marking work or whatever, and me and my friend used to do the same thing, where if it was 10 past the hour, we'd go, well, we'll start at 15:15. And then if it was 16, 17, 18 minutes past the hour, I'll start at 15:30. I'll just have a cup of tea. And you would just do that hour in, hour out of just like, I'll start 15:15, 2:15. So I have to seriously put in places to kind of blinker myself and allow me to work.
It is the biggest challenge, just being able to focus on something for long enough to sort of make progress. Because with anything really, creative music, I think it's just a matter of having the focus and the time, and even doing it. Like, I can have good days where I'm sort of feeling productive and getting a lot off the to-do list, but there's so many sort of supplementary things that are hard to get in as well. Like I want to ideally spend sort of 30 minutes to an hour, maybe learning something, playing piano, guitar, whatever it might be. And that's the hardest one for me to get in, because it's like, well, I could be spending that time ticking things off the to-do list. And it's like, ultimately, in a couple of years, maybe if I'd spent that half an hour a day, then I'd be a much better musician or, better producer, rather than just firefighting constantly. So it's such a difficult balance to find.
Do you have other, this might sound like a stupid question at first, but I think you'll know where I'm going with this. But do you have other areas of interest to your life, to your person, that is outside of music? Do you see yourself as like, everything I do is music and production focused?
I think I've been battling with this recently. It's a challenge for me, because I love what I'm doing, and I want to do it forever. Really, I want this to maintain, my job for the rest of my career. Because before music, I really didn't enjoy my work. But at the same time, there's just even like there's games that are coming out that I'd like to play, or like I used to go like bouldering and stuff like that, and I just feel so much guilt when I'm not working at the minute because everything's at home. I could be working if I'm at home, but so that's another challenge because and again like it's scrolling on Instagram. It sort of feels like a little bit of, even though it's completely just passing time. I also potentially feel like I'm maybe working a bit. I'm seeing what the people are doing, what's trending.
Yeah, you
So,
fool
so
yourself
then
into going like,
you
well, this
fool
is
yourself into
research.
thinking it's productive, but also then I'll see that all of these opportunities that I could be doing. It's like, oh, this genre's taken off. Why am I not making that? Or this trend's going really well. So it's sort of it's a bit destructive in that way as well.
Dude, that's so interesting that you say that. How do you? I'm very much the same, by the way. And the reason I
Mm.
asked that question is because there used to be, and this is so finical. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but this is. I used to follow this creator, and then he started putting out almost like rise and grind content. And I remember one of his clickbaity scrolling through TikTok, quick pieces of content was, I really don't keep anybody around me that isn't about music. Like we're either talking about music or we're cooking up. And I remember being like, and he
Yeah.
was much younger than you and I remember just being like, oh, there's no, because I've been there and I couldn't follow that creator anymore or creators like them, because I remember there was a point in my career, sorry, where it was prior to YouTube, and I tried to blinker my life. Like I wasn't in a relationship. I only had music books, didn't have a TV, didn't have a games console,
Mm.
only consumed like music documentaries, things about music, was listening to albums, and was only making music every day. And what happened was within the space of like a year or two was just severely depressed, just being like, I hate doing this, but I have this
Yeah.
aim, because when I was a kid I played drums and was like, oh, I'm going to be a musician, and I had this aim of like, well, I have to be doing that. And for a long time, even now, like you say, I have this guilt of really enjoying life, like enjoying other things. I want to be fitter. I've always been a skinny kid, so I want to have, like put a bit of weight on and go to the gym. And I feel like an hour
Right.
or two at the gym is such a long time. How much could you create in 2 hours at Ableton? And the same with golf. Me and my buddy just got into golf like past few months, and it's just one of those stupid white sports that I'm embarrassed to say that I've got into recently, but I really like it, and it's captured me in the same way that I would like to put the hours into that and like go to the range and practice and then go play around the golf. And I just have this pang of like, oh, but you're not making money, putting out content, learning music, writing.
Mm.
How do you combat that to make sure that you're filling all areas of the pie, which is your life?
It is a challenge. I've probably not sort of mastered it yet, I guess. I think for me, I've always been able to spend time on sort of going to the gym, um, and sort of healthy related things because I'm sort of thinking like, well, if I do that, it reduces my stress and then I can focus more. And I find that exercise, I can usually sort of think of ideas, and I've always like sort of jotting things down,
You can feed it back into the pot. So like if
which I
you're,
guess feeds back into the loop.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I've probably not mastered it. I think in my mind, and I know intellectually it's not true, but my plan has always been right. Well, I've got a house now. I'll try and pay off the house. Once I've paid off the house, then I'm sort of free, and then I'll be able to do other things. But I guess there's always something else that comes along.
mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, I've not really got a solution yet at the minute as well. I'm just working a lot, but I don't know. I think I'll try and find something to break the cycle, I guess.
It's all good. We're just like, I think all musicians are these, similar to addicts in a sense. We've all
Mm.
got a thing. Musicians, producers, we're all like, most of us are perfectionists, and if we're not, strongly gravitated or addicted to one thing. I said it on the last podcast with Maria. There was something that an ex-girlfriend, when we were together, said to me, and I think it was like a passing comment, and it really like stuck with me. It hurt, you know. She said that I had an ability to turn any conversation into music. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And there was somebody's, I think it was her dad or someone was talking about football, and I don't watch football. I'm not into it at all. So that's an area I don't know about.
Yeah.
But they'd said about a certain player, and I kind of went, you know, matrix in my mind to a story I'd read about them listening to a certain album or having a relationship with a certain musician or something like that. And I was able to go, oh yeah, that person that you're talking about in that interest that you have, which is football. Let's make it about music. And we just kind of went over here. And I think she said it in just a way of like, do you know that's a thing you do? And then to me, I was like, oh, that's a bad trait, because that's like making sure that everybody in the room is on the page I want to be on, rather than, you know, and that was something I had to kind of fix in my life to not always be the expert, because it was that perfectionism of like, oh, I don't want to be caught on the back foot of like having to say to people I don't really know. And I think in my next relationship I learned that, you know, because that partner that I had kind of like pulled me up on those points and was like, why do you, she was a bit more on the nose, and she was like, why do you bullshit about stuff? And I was like, oh, she was like, just say you don't, you know, just say you don't know, and someone will explain it. And then when I started taking up hobbies, because for a long time I didn't know what I enjoyed. I didn't know, like when people would say, well, what do you like outside of music? I'd be like, oh God, the question, I have no idea. I just started trying things, and then got really into like, not really into, but I found a refreshing freedom or relaxation from like being crap at something. Just like the golf situation. I'm really bad at it. It's a fairly like expensive sport, so I can't go all the time. And when I do go, I go with my secondhand, like really crap gear that I got off of eBay for like 20 quid. And I take lessons with someone, and I'm like, you know, I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can hit this tiny ball, you know, hundreds of yards and try and get it in this tiny hole. It's like going everywhere. But for some reason, I'm like, I want to get really good at this sport, and I'm happy not being good at it, you know?
Yeah.
If I can pivot slightly, because I'm aware. How are you doing for time, buddy? Have you got something?
Oh, all good. Yeah, I got nothing on till lunch.
I just wanted to ask what maybe are some of the struggles you find in the YouTube space, separate to perhaps like lo-fi and just kind of the YouTube side of your career.
I think I'm quite aware that I haven't really got a YouTube sort of focus, which I think maybe you need. And I guess if you ever watched like, I haven't in a while, but I've watched videos on like how to grow a YouTube channel, and it's like, well, you need to make it clear what you do. And I think I've not really got that at the minute.
Do you think?
I think so.
I think you are the thing. Like, people know you, so they come to you, and this is just my perspective of it.
You reckon?
You know, before we knew each other, you know, I was familiar with you and your brand, and I would gravitate towards your YouTube channel and just kind of go, oh, okay, well, what's Mondo's perspective on this? And then if you made something else, I was like, oh, so how would Mondo Loops go about making a bonobo style track or a particular texture? I would assume you're the thing. Do you not feel like that?
I don't know. Like, so I guess with your videos, I know that if I watch one of your videos, I'm going to learn something.
Okay.
Educational about music production, I think it's fair to say. And often you explore different genres. It's like interesting to see how you approach new sounds. But I think, I don't know, sometimes I just want to film, get some nice like shots and just film making something without necessarily, I suppose, making the focus that it's educational. I think I'm conscious sometimes. I don't really explain anything, or like go into like what I'm playing, or theory and that sort of thing. And I mean, so the video that blew up for me was a guitar chord progression tutorial, the one where I got loads of things wrong and said the wrong. Can't remember what I did. I said the wrong chord name or something like that. But the guitar tutorial videos were sort of doing really well. And I could post a new one and it'd do well, but I don't know. I just didn't want to sort of do that constantly. And then I started to, make behind the scenes, just filming the process and putting it out. And I don't know. I've not really got a plan at the minute, I suppose. And I think YouTube's difficult in that. It's a slow burner, it feels like, and you've got to sort of play the game, I suppose, and make those little mistakes on purpose and get the clickbait thumbnails and stuff to do well. So yeah, it's a bit of I don't know. I'm trudging on with it, making the odd video. I'm not as consistent, I think, as I should be, and I guess reels as well. I've not made any reels yet. That's on my agenda for the past few years. I've not made
past few years is me as well.
Yeah,
I've been
sitting not done it.
Mm-hmm.
Not done it. And YouTube shorts and I've not really got into that yet.
Yeah,
and I think that's where people are growing at the minute. I guess you've always got they want to push whatever new feature they've come up with, so you've got to hop on it quickly, I think.
That's what it is. Yeah, like if they, Instagram with square photos, and then I think they're in that competition with TikTok and I guess YouTube as well. And when Instagram first made, I guess, what is Reels now, but I remember it was just like portrait videos or whatever at the time, and it was 8 seconds. It was 1 second or a few seconds longer than TikTok. It was like, if you use that, we're going to promote you because we want more users. And then it was this constant like TikTok, Instagram, and now Shorts with YouTube. You really have to be using those new features. And I'll watch some of the creators that, similar to the content you mentioned earlier, of like how to properly grow on these channels. And it's like, okay, carousels is now the new thing. And it's like, what do you do as a musician on carousels? You just got a picture of each of your, guitars and some different drumsticks. And that's something I've sat on for a while. And it's why I've kind of like changed my setup. I've now got like an L-shape table. So this is like the focus for YouTube. And then I've got a like Instagram Reels kind of angle, I guess, that looks at all of this gear. So it looks a little bit more like kind of not cinematic, but intriguing, I guess, for the Reels audience. But I just find it quite hard to. I could sit there and like make a bunch of beats, and then on a Monday film or mime all of those beat making videos for Instagram, but it almost feels like throwaway content. YouTube feels like, oh, this is like satisfactory. My audience comes here and they learn something and it's educative, and they can ask questions and we can have a conversation. They can go over to the Discord and get bits, and they can go over to the Patreon and they get more of a benefit. But with Instagram and TikTok, it always feels like, oh, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm growing. I'm getting that little number. I'm getting that dopamine hit. But these are throwaway, 20-second beats that I probably don't feel confident enough all of them are going to turn into a song that I'll put on Spotify. I think it's almost like a vanity metric that you feel like you need alongside. Because I also worry about like YouTube disappearing one day. There was a time when Google Video was a thing.
I think
when you and I were at school, I was in year 7 or 8, so maybe you're in junior school. And I remember it was like Google AOL, maybe MSN or something like that. And then Google Video for like, it felt like back then 6 months. And then YouTube was a thing. And it was like a Wild West. Dude, you could find anything on YouTube. There was no safeguarding on that. And then I think back to that, like, oh, Google Video is not a thing. Bebo isn't a thing. MySpace isn't a thing. And my main platform is like YouTube. And I think about like, shit, if I just disappeared or if someone hacked me or something, where do I go? Do I just shout out to the smaller audience that I have on Instagram? I go, hey, I got a new channel. It's in my backlog as well. It's probably my biggest stress, I think, of if we do want to go right back to the beginning of our conversation, if we did want to call ourselves content creators, I think about the other content that I probably don't put too much focus on, you know?
Yeah. I feel like YouTube as well, to me, it's the sort of peak of content creation. Like, for example, the sort of Casey Neistat vlogs. I really enjoyed how sort of well edited they are.
Mm.
They look great. He's sort of crafting a story out of just his day to day life, and I found them really interesting and artsy, and the music and the videography was great. And it feels like almost frustrating now that some of the content that does really well on TikTok and Instagram and Reels and that sort of thing, it's just so quick and almost. I mean, I'm sure it's very like there's thought behind it, but often it sort of feels quite lazy and it's just like 3 seconds.
Mm. Like
Sort of
the
clip.
trend right now where it's a 1 second, it sounds like a little like light bulb sound effect, and it plays. Have you seen this? It just goes ding, 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 and
Yeah.
it just plays that same still. And of course, this person, whilst whoever the viewer is reads the description, they're just getting
Oh yeah,
view
the
after
little
view after
finesse
view.
in the
That's it.
system.
Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
like, but why? You know, and
Yeah, it feels
everybody's doing.
like a bit wrong, but it works. And there was a phase where people were just like, they just sort of like walk into a room, just be like, "I made this song," and just point up and it'd go on loop, and it'd be
Yeah,
like, it'd get millions and millions of streams or plays or whatever.
you
And
need to
it's sort
do
of like,
the the mega influencer bio where it says like, if you want to sound like me and have a top lo-fi sound, then just comment yes and I'll send you a DM,
oh
and
yeah,
then you
just
have that
DMs.
automated. You need that going out to your followers, buddy,
It's all very very businessy in it and
isn't it? Yeah.
click funnels and
Mega
yeah.
influencer.
But yeah, it just feels like there was a phase of YouTube, and it still exists, where it was just the opposite, and there's no hashtags, there's no like, you're not trying to sell you anything. It's just like a well-made 10 minute, like a short film almost. Or there's like musicians who will do these just like 3 minute clips of them just playing the song. There's no hashtags, there's no like SEO title, but just great and it does well.
I
Sort of, I
have
feel like
faith.
that's what I want to be, the stuff that does well, the really impressive, like well made.
I feel like the pendulum swings a little bit. We saw it with film. I don't know about you, but like I'm big into film and cinematography and stuff. And
Yeah.
my favorite decade
You're
of
letterboxed.
dude, we can talk about this after. My friend Maya, who's helped out with the channel before, she's pushed me towards Letterbox and left me a nice like 17-minute voice note, which by the way is too long. And I was listening to her reviews on Letterbox and how I need to set up, and it's one of those things where I think it's going to be another time suck for me, because I'll be on Letterbox and I'll be leaving my reviews and I'll be trying to find films and stuff, but it feels like something I would love.
Yeah. It pushes you just to watch great films, I think.
Ones you hadn't heard of, right? Because they're kind of in your niche and your interest.
Yeah, there'll be obscure, like, I think the top film is like an obscure Japanese film from the 70s. Everyone just absolutely raves about stuff that you just never watch. But it's like, oh, okay, sounds interesting.
Top 3 films. Go for it.
Ooh, big one. I feel like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind's gone up there recently.
Yeah,
Absolutely in love with the soundtrack. Maybe not recently. Past few years, I just keep going back to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And there was like, what was it called? There was a couple of tracks a rapper had sung over from the soundtrack, and it's just absolute perfection. I can't remember who did it now.
Sounds like something Joey Badass would do, but I don't want to speak out my ass there.
Exhibit.
Just a couple of lo-fi white guys trying to talk.
Anyway, I probably should know that, but yeah, Eternal Sunshine. I don't know. Interstellar's back in the cinemas, I think, soon. Interstellar, like a 10-year anniversary. I love that.
Which is mental. That it's 10 years, and you're like, oh,
it's mental. Yeah, I remember watching it. Felt very recent. I don't know, maybe Lord of the Rings. Third
You're
one.
gonna go with like Genie asking for 3 more wishes kind of thing. You're gonna go Lord of the Rings trilogy. I see. A little bit of a cheat, but we'll take it.
Throw in a third one as the best. Maybe the first
Yeah.
or third.
Fellowship. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
But yourself.
I'll throw you a curveball. I think that new film, because you've already, I was going to say my favorite decade, my favorite genre, if you like, is 90s movies. I feel like the 90s, there was so much money and cocaine in Hollywood that they were just like greenlighting everything. They were like, I got an idea about a park that has dinosaurs in it. And they were like, yep, go for it. And they were like, they're these guys, they're kind of like 911. You got fire engines, you got the police, you got ambulance, you've also got Ghostbusters. And they were like, yes, let's go for it. Like, there was all these great movies that came out that were
Yeah,
like
it was good era.
amazing. And then 2000, we did the prequel era, right? We did Star Wars, The Phantom Menace and all of that. And it was prequels for a long time. Then we did sequels. And it feels like now I went to see the new Alien movie, which I really enjoyed. Script was so-so, but I really enjoyed like all the animatronics and just it felt like Interstellar. It felt like I was watching I kind of knew it was a model spaceship going through space. And I kind of knew that they were animatronic or rubber face huggers, but it felt good to see that because it felt like they were interacting with something real. And I've lost why I was even speaking on that. What was I saying before? 90s.
Top 3 films.
Yeah. I don't know why I said I'd seen the new Alien. Anyway.
Is that up there?
New Alien was good. New Alien isn't, but a newer film, which is Parasite.
Oh yeah, I've not seen Parasite yet.
Do you mind subtitles?
I don't mind subtitles.
Add it to the list, buddy. I really enjoyed it. It feels like a fresh film. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. Sequel era, prequels, all of that kind of thing. And I went to the cinema the other day to see Alien, and the first 5 trailers were superhero films. I feel like it never really went away, but we're still kind of in that Marvel, DC. We're either doing dark superhero stuff or we're doing bright and sparkly Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
And I could never, even as a kid, I could never sink my teeth into fight the baddie at the beginning. Oh no, they're too strong for us. Go away, devise a plan, big blue light in the sky, fight the baddie. That's the end of the film. Wait till after the credits to see a little bonus pic of some other superhero. It just never really grabbed me. But I think the pendulum is swinging back to like those original indie films. And that's why Letterboxd is good. Because you find those smaller films that are maybe on, I don't know, Prime or Now TV and haven't really been swept up in the Netflix bubble. Anyway, long story as always. Top 3 films. Parasite. I think it's fantastic. I really enjoy kind of the symmetry of it. Yeah. Feels very Wes Anderson when you're watching it. Right. And there's lots of like light and dark stuff, lots of stuff that you can pick apart. Really good scripting because it's subtitles. It has to be, but they've just really got like the humor really dialed in, which you don't often see in subtitles. I'd probably say Eternal Sunshine, but just to have a different list to you for the listener, I'm going to go with Parasite, Moonlight. I like that movie.
Yeah.
I like the kind of like three parts of the chap story. And then I'll go with. I would have gravitated to Lord of the Rings. I've never seen Harry Potter, by the way.
Really?
Don't know if that's like.
Is that one of those hills that you're going to die on now? Like you're never going to watch it?
When I was a kid, this is so dumb. Harry Potter was coming out around the same time as Lord of the Rings, and I was like, "Yeah, they're different films." I get that now, but as a kid, I was like, "Team Lord of the Rings." Anybody that sees Harry Potter sucks. Then I got older and I read some of the books. I think the first 3 books, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yes, it's a cool book." There was so much hype around it, much like the Twilight series. There are some Harry Potter fans that are going wild in the comments now. Twilight's nothing like Harry Potter.
That's an insult, I think.
I know, right? But it felt very much like that to me. And now I'm like 30, and I just can't. I don't want to watch. For some reason, I'll watch like old magicians running around the forest, protecting a ring. But I can't do kids in school trying to make one levitate.
I think we watch Harry Potter probably like every couple of years. We'll watch all of them again, me and my wife, and it's definitely not as strong a film as Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings feels so well made.
Nice, neat package as well. 3 movies.
It's a neat package. Looks fantastic for the era.
Mm,
And I got the like 4K remaster as well, and it looks brilliant.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of like nostalgia behind Harry Potter, and it's a great story. And I don't know. I think they could probably make a better one because they're making a series now.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's your time to
Some
hop on.
some of the series of movies are nice, like, you know, when they do, I think there's an Alien series coming.
Oh yeah.
They did like I know we spoke of, you know, I kind of badmouth superhero movies, but like they did a Blade series. Those like darker, slower series where they've got longer to work with. I'll probably say Star Wars. If we're going to throw a trilogy in,
Oh yeah.
OG Star Wars, that would be my third one. There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like they have a little bit more time to work with, to go, okay, we don't need everything to happen in 30 minutes or an hour. We can prolong that over. For like, one of my favorite series would probably be like the first series of True Detective.
But yeah, that's fantastic.
And everything was kind of building up to like that sort of 4th, 5th episode where they did that long
Yeah.
follow cam sequence. Like, I thought that was like really terrific. Second series, not so much. I was like, okay, I'm out. I won't be watching this.
Who was in the second one?
Second one was I think it was Rachel McAdams and Vince Vaughn, or I've maybe confused those with two different
three,
series.
I think, isn't there?
Right, yeah.
The first one was absolutely peak
spot on.
TV, yeah.
How do you feel about, we spoke about Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. How do you feel about lo-fi artists that do the Harry Potter lo-fi, you know, the pop music lo-fi? Is that a trend that you can see yourself jumping on, or do you is that a hill that you die on?
As in like remixes, unofficial, or like?
Yeah.
I think it's a good way of getting yourself out there,
Sure.
especially for newer artists. There's definitely some lazy remixes for sure. Like I've heard some really awful lo-fi remixes of like good music, be it like covers or like films.
There's like a
pop
punk scene where folks will do like Fat Lip by Sum 41, but it's lo-fi, and they do like all of the pop. And I'm like, oh, I can tell you've got the MIDI off of Google, and you've just applied.
That's it.
Like...
Yeah, it's really stiff. Like there's no nuance to it. So yeah, there's definitely lazy versions of it, but I mean, there's some fantastic lo-fi covers as well. I think it can be a great way of getting your name out there. I don't know how effective it is at the minute. I know there was like the Redbone covers,
of course,
which in the like 30-40 million streams that were done quite well. But yeah, it's just I think, why not? If you've got a good one, you're gonna give it the time, I guess, to make it good.
I think I'll do like a real meta, bide my time, wait until Mondo Loops starts to delve into a new genre, and then I'll do, you know, Mondo Loops electronica, but it's Mondo Loops lo-fi, and I'll just kind of reimagine your new work as like the Mondo Loops of old. Just kind of, maybe I'll give you a credit so it all goes back into the pot.
Beat slowed and reverb.
Yeah. Dude, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I've really, really enjoyed hanging out with you.
Thanks for having me.
Is there anything else that you want to plug or promote before we shoot off?
Not really. If you've not checked out my YouTube channel before, definitely recommend it. I'm trying to come up with some new ideas, some videos. So there'll be some interesting stuff. Hopefully YouTube picks it up, but we'll see. But yeah,
awesome.
That's about it.
You've got sample packs and things at your website as well.
Yeah, sample packs at mondoloops.com. I released a dark ambient vital pack recently, which people were loving. So I'm following that up with the second one. And yeah, I don't know if people haven't tried Vital yet. I am loving Vital. It's great for
and it's free as
sound
well.
Design. It's free. It's a free synth engine, and it's got so much adjustability, and it's really sort of intuitive, I'd say, versus maybe Diva and Serum. I found a little bit harder to actually pick up. As fantastic as they are.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's got a good barrier of entry.
A Vital plug.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, buddy. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too, man.
All the best.
Catch you soon.